everybody, and welcome to Sociologically Speaking, the podcast that helps you understand society critically, logically, and beyond the broad explanations that you are used to hearing. Today, I'm going to be joined by my friend and fellow sociologist, Jonathan Chapman. We will be discussing social inequality with a focus on how social structures and individual agency shape it within the South African context. Anyway, let's get right into it.
Yeah.
What is social inequality? It refers to the unequal distribution and access to resources within a society. These resources can include education, housing, healthcare, and so on and so forth, all of which play a very significant role in the lives of individuals.
Yeah.
Before we go deeper into the conversation, here's a short background on the history of colonialism and apartheid in South Africa.
Apartheid really began in 1948, but separating black Africans from the white minority had long been a policy aim. Laws made white people officially superior, and the large black majority faced discrimination in every aspect of their lives. Living, doing business or owning land in white areas was banned. There were separate public facilities, transport and schools. Interracial marriage was banned. Many had no right to citizenship and were regarded as aliens in major cities. Instead, they were made citizens of Bantustans, homelands scattered throughout South Africa.
Did you actually know that South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world?
You know, since I am South African, I do kind of know that. But it definitely ties into the historical influences of colonization and apartheid.
Colonialism started off with the exploitation of South African people as well as the natural resources. These resources were used by them to later build their own empires there in the West. However, later came apartheid, and that just worsened things because it brought about the legalization of
racial discrimination.
Exactly,
you know?
like black people or people of color were completely separated from white people, where they only benefited while the rest struggled.
Yeah, and you know, the unfortunate thing is that most countries gained independence after colonization, but then in South Africa, apartheid was introduced.
Exactly.
And even though that has been abolished since 1994, the structural inequalities that emerged due to it
are present today.
Still here. Yeah.
That's why it's so important to have this conversation. Colonialism and apartheid shaped inequality in South Africa. Laws like the 1913 Land Act and Bantu Homelands Act forced non-white populations into underdeveloped areas with limited access to basic services. The Bantu Education Act also enforced unequal education. Today, these inequalities are still visible not only in housing, but in contemporary public and private healthcare and education institutions. Now that we have discussed social inequality, it is important that we link it to a sociological theory for better understanding.
Structural functionalism.
It was first brought about by Emile Durkheim, who kind of laid the foundational steps to it. However, Talcott Parsons, between the years of 1930 to 1950, further emphasized and reintroduced it as a...
He refined it.
Yeah, basically says is that the structures that we have in society all play a specific role which enhance balance.
Yes. It works towards equilibrium.
Exactly. However, this could be a bit tricky, you know?
It does come with its limitations because it assumes that all structures are inherently equal and that they work towards equality.
Exactly. According to structural functionalism, colonialism and apartheid were actually developed to bring about balance in South African society, which it didn't.
They played a role.
Yeah.
It shows that structural functionalism kind of fails to address conflicts and inequalities that are present within society as well.
Since we have just spoken about structural functionalism, it is only right that we discuss the role of social structures and individual agency. Social structures basically refer to like networks or relationships of individuals within a society. So this can include family, your peers at school, and so forth and so on and so forth.
Yeah, you can think of it as like the pillars of society that keeps it together.
And these relationships actually affect our lives in ways that we can't even comprehend. They also affect the opportunities, the decisions we make.
And it's about the interconnected relationship between structures in society and individuals and their agency, and how both of them influence the other. Most people have free choice and the ability to make decisions for themselves, which then influence those structures and how they change.
How true is this? Individuals play a significant role in the creation and maintenance of society and its structures. In South Africa, historical structures like apartheid and colonialism continue to influence contemporary social disparities and unequal access to resources, shaping individual life chances by systemically benefiting certain groups over others. Institutional structures maintain inequalities by failing to effectively challenge the status quo, usually for the capitalist benefits of the powerful minority.
Although we do have that agency, we often accept these social structures and
I feel
rather
like
than challenging them.
individuals in society, they think that we're not just, placed here. We actually play a very big role in maintaining these social inequalities within the structures.
But then it brings up the question, to what extent? Because the structures do ultimately have such a big influence on us as well.
Exactly. To wrap this all up, social inequalities in South Africa remain deeply rooted and complex issues which stem from the history of colonialism and apartheid, which went over for a long period of time. So
yeah, and it shows that inequality is so much more than just a person's individual circumstances.
Because it is also dependent on the broader social structures that create and reinforce it. A notable example that I bring up is that many people of color in South Africa, which is actually the majority of the country, still live in townships and informal settlements compared to their white counterparts who live in urban areas that are close to every resource.
Yeah.
They have healthcare, education, whereas for them, it's a completely different story. Understanding both social structures and individual agency are essential if we ever want to address social inequalities in South Africa. That's because it's only through understanding society when we can actually make a change. I have a question for the viewers. Do you think that individual agency alone can overcome social inequalities, or do social structures determine our life choices? Let me know in the comments, and thank you for watching.